Well, yes, in this presentation we'll outline my ethnographic research in World of Warcraft, which had the aim of finding some insights for the design of personal informatics systems. So, as you may know, personal informatics embraces all those devices and applications that allow for the collection of personal data. And the first and most used definition of personal informatics systems are those that help people collect personally relevant information for the purpose of self-reflection and gaining self-knowledge. So there is a growing trend for personal informatics because self-tracking instruments are growing in popularity and are spreading among the larger population, and it has been forecasted that this would make a huge quantity of personal data available very soon. But there are also some potential barriers that could prevent this spreading, because self-tracking tools demand many efforts from their users in terms of time, motivation, compliance, and the long-term engagement. This is mainly due to the fact that not all the data can be automatically tracked. Many data need to rely on self-reporting, and also those that can be automatically tracked need to be somehow curated to become meaningful and actionable. And there are also issues in visualizations and management of this data. So our recent research highlighted that 1/3 of the Americans that purchased the tracker abandoned it after only 6 months of use. So to overcome some of these barriers, many researchers and designers use gamification, so the use of game design elements to increase user engagement and enjoyment. However, this approach has some limitations because at SenseNow designers employed a scarce variety of game elements, mainly points, badges, and leaderboards, which mostly insert users within a competitive frame and are mostly addressed to elicit behavior change goals rather than self-awareness and self-knowledge support. So, what I propose is to look at the world of full-fledged video games to gain some insights and inspiration for the design of personal informatics systems. Had two main objectives. The first one was to explore how players ascribe meaning to their in-game data. The hypothesis that this could be relevant also for domains outside the game world. And the second one was to expand the catalog of game elements to be employed in personal informatics designs. So what I did was to look at the world of massively multiplayer online role-play games. This is because they require their players to manage a large amount of information in the form of quantitative data and stats. So they are an optimal object of study to investigate how players make sense of their own data. And among these, I selected World of Warcraft because it's one of the most typical massive games available on the market, and it sets some of the game genre standards. So since I wanted to conduct qualitative research, a typical case is fundamental for allowing the generalization of the results. So my research is described in a reflexive ethnography approach, which values the ethnographer's subjectivity and considers subjective experiences important and relevant to be reported in the ethnographic recounting. And this somehow allows to compare the reporting of the natives, in this case the players, with the subjective experience of the ethnographers, and allows to grasp the world of game from a first-person perspective. So this was important for me because I was interested in how players ascribe meaning to their data and in the sense-making processes that lie behind the data. So the method was composed of a 4-year participant observation in 3 different phases in World of Warcraft from October 2012 to September 2016. Personal diary written daily and hundreds of informal interviews registered through the Google chat and 36 formal interviews. I also analyzed a huge quantity of documents in the forms of guides, blog posts, forum posts, and so on. So what I would like to do now is to highlight the three main themes that emerged from the analysis and connect them to some design suggestions for personal informatics. So the first theme that I considered interesting for personal informatics is the fact that in World of Warcraft, players have to manage a huge quantity of numeric information, but they do not manipulate abstract numbers, but they use digital objects in the form of items, gear, equipment, mounts. All these objects embed numeric values that modify the stats of the character. And the interesting thing is that these objects give shape and value to numbers. So they allow for the evocation of interpretations, memories, and emotions. And they can also be immediately used because they can be collected, they can be donated, they can be destroyed, they can be worn. So, and they modify, in doing so, they modify the evolution of the character. That somehow represents the evolution of the player in the game. So there is a strict connection between the player and her game data, and this is mediated by the character and by the objects that it wore. And so, a couple of suggestions that we can connect with this theme is, for personal informatics are that we may think of transforming data into somehow dynamic digital objects where data are somehow embedded in data packages with their own identity because they have a graphical representation and a name and some properties like the objects in World of Warcraft have, because they are all identifiable and they all evoke memories and the context where they were collected. And we can also think to make this object usable in the sense of that users could discharge, solve, conceal, or share these objects. For example, in this perspective, sharing data could become a means to donate an intimate experience to significant others, or we could also think that we could destroy some of these data objects for forgetting some past data connected, for example, with negative memories. So another point is to make users identify with their data by creating visualization that actually grow and evolve with the user as new data are collected, and we may think of making this data appear on the surface of this visualization, maybe on some details of this visualization, and the idea behind this is to strengthen the emotional connection between the user and the data. Second theme that I want to highlight is about self-experimentation, because players to succeed in the game and the hardest challenges of the game need to discover and master a quantitative knowledge that is made up of stats, formulas, and macros, and this kind of activity has been called theory crafting. And is the activity of experimenting on the field different combination of objects and different combination of numbers to maximize the potentialities of the character. And the interesting thing here is that novices, that different users at different levels of expertise have different needs. So novices search for quick answers to problems, whereas expert players seek fine-grained tools for simulation, analysis, and hypothesis testing. And what is interesting is that the World of Warcraft offers, is the model that Warcraft offers, because it offers a variety of tools to manage data that can be connected and disconnected with main interfaces. So it offers different visualizations modalities and different analyzing tools for satisfying the diverse needs of players at different levels of experience. And this could be inspiring for personal informatics because also in the personal informatics field, expert trackers have different needs from inexperienced trackers. Expert trackers want specialized tools to simulate and test hypotheses, whereas experienced trackers need to be provided with objectives to be reached and easy to read interpretations of their data. So we think of creating flexible models where there is a unique platform that collect the user data and different plugins that allow for different visualization depending on the user's needs and different analyzing tools that can be also automatically adapted depending on the user's expertise. And the final thing that I want to highlight is related to the communities of practice. An interesting thing in World of Warcraft is the most of the knowledge that players need to acquire is transferred in small communities that are called guilds, where players share knowledge and develop collective interpretations. So players, these guilds transmit touching knowledge mainly through learning by doing, as in communities of practicing, and mentorship. And the interesting thing about mentors is that they provide extremely tailored recommendations to other players, receiving in exchange social centrality, but also they are allowed to develop their knowledge by teaching to others because they can face problems, novel problems by answering to the questions of other players. So we may think of designing small personal informatics guilds that are characterized by a small community, a very small community, where we may create a sense of intimacy that may foster somehow the development of mutual understanding, but also self-expression and self-exposure, and be focused on knowledge transfer, mutual support, rather than performance and behavior change and competition, for example. And we can also think of support mentorship in these small communities, where more expert users could guide less experienced ones, and individuals could somehow expose, we think of a sort of a pitch, expose their problems connected with the data, with the interpretations of data to the others, and the others may be engaged in collective solving them. So, as a final points, I want to highlight a couple of takeaways. The first one is that embodying data into digital entities may make data more concrete, avoiding excessive quantification and abstraction. And we know that especially novices in sub-tracking have difficulties in understanding stats and graphs. So another point is that we need more personalized personal informatics tools that are adapted on the basis of the user's level of expertise, because different users have different numeric needs. And the last one is that we may think of structuring personal informatics communities more oriented toward self-knowledge and the improvement of self-reflection instead of focusing them on competition and behavior change. So another point that I would like to highlight is that by looking at the world of full-fledged video games, we may find useful insights for the design of gamified systems in this, for example, here in personal informatics, but also I think in other domains, for example, in crowdsourcing or for online communities, because full-fledged games, video games, embed a profound knowledge about how to engage users, how to give meaning to users, and gamification should learn from the lessons of games instead of focusing on a few game mechanics that are for sure effective, but maybe we need more variety in the implementation of different gamifying tools. So, thank you.
Thank you, Amon. We have time for a couple of questions. Please don't forget to state your name and affiliation.
Hi, Ernest Wheeler, University of Michigan. Thank you for a really interesting talk. It seems to me that a lot of the takeaways are depend on the fact that World of Warcraft is sort of a very consuming hobby where the real objective is success in the game. And when we're looking at personal informatics systems, we don't want this to be a sort of consuming hobby. So how would you sort of balance your findings with transitioning to a platform where we want users to be spending a minimal amount of time and for it to be less intrusive in their lives?
Yes, it is true, but it is also true that World of Warcraft has very different manifestations. So it can be played at different levels because there are also casual players in World of Warcraft that develop their characters, but they are not engaged in riding, for example, or being involved in riding guilds, but maybe are involved in casual guilds, in social guilds, so they find this place more as a place where to chat, spend time together. So it is true that it's really involving, but it can be played at different levels, and I think that this is one of the reasons behind its success. So it's an enormous success for 13, 14 years. So,
thank you.
Hello, James Prather, Abilene Christian University. So in World of Warcraft, you're in these guilds, and you mentioned like social centrality is the payoff for helping other players. I spend hundreds of hours, thousands of hours with these guild people. They become my best friends. But it seems like that payoff of social centrality wouldn't be there for personal informatics systems, an expert in that perhaps. So how do you think about motivation to motivate these intimate communities?
to motivate personal informatics.
Yeah.
Well, we may think of gamify these small communities, and one interesting thing of World of Warcraft is that guilds have very different structures from one to another. So some of them have a steep hierarchy, other ones have a flat hierarchies. There are different roles. So we may use these different social structures to motivate people. We can also think of, because one of the other rewards is to gain objects when helping others. And we can also think of exchanging some kind of rewards between users in the small communities. So I only focus on some aspects because it's not time, but in the paper there is a more nuanced picture of how can we use these small communities in personal informatics.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's thank Amon one more time.